This video, we're going to explore very briefly about the universality of emotions. So, first question is: Are emotions universal? And if we go back to the Liggett, the emotional experience of Liggett by the Ilongot, have you ever felt this, this frothy, passionate thing? I mean, if you looked at the pure physiology of what Liggett is, you probably experienced it. But the thing is that as we showed in the first video for this topic, that an emotion involves not just physiological arousal but cognitive labels. And did you label the physiological experience in the same way that the Ilongot did? And the answer is no, no, you did not. So if you look at, in one way, yeah, universal emotions, universal physiological arousal, but cognitive appraisals are radically different. So what happens is Darwin, in fact, in one of his earliest books, it was The Emotion of Man and Animals, I think it was called. It was maybe his third or fourth book. And he argued, because he was, of course, talking about evolution, and he was extending the concept of evolution in a pure biological sense, and starting to incorporate psychological components into his theory. And so he argued that the emotions that animals experience and the emotions that humans experience are very similar to each other. And so he kind of laid it out, but more recently we find Robert Plutchik really put this idea together, and he put here's a chart. Emotions have survival value, and we're talking about survival value for humans, and animals, all animals. Okay, so if you take a look at the left column, we've got events in the environment or things that occur. And in the second column, we have a cognition. And yeah, all right, what kind of experience that you'll have, and therefore what's your emotional. Your emotional state is fear, anger, joy, etc. And so the argument is that all animals have these. When these stimulus events in the environment occur, these feeling states occur. And so then what happens is that fear is an undesirable, I mean, we're talking motivation at this point. Fear is an undesirable internal state, and we are motivated to eliminate that fear. And so, how can I eliminate or reduce that fear? By running away. Oh, perfect. So, what happens as a consequence or effect of this is safety. And so you can see what happens is that the emotional experiences in the center column, which are triggered by events in the environment in the first column, will motivate animals to perform very specific behaviors in the fourth column, which have the adaptive consequence shown in the last column. So it's pretty straightforward that there's to have survival. So Paul Ekman was the biggest player in this game of emotional research. And he argued that there was these basic human emotions. You can see happiness, surprise, sadness, fear, disgust, contempt, and anger. Right? He's got these, and lo and behold, he shows these pictures, and everybody can pretty much figure them out. But these are posed because he's telling the first person, "I want you to show happiness." And this woman here, she shows happiness. And the second one, "I want you to show surprise." So these are posed. And so even though he showed some kinds of common acceptance for these emotions. The next question was, yeah, but people in industrialized nations, they have so much exposure to media, they have so much exposure to etc. So we wanted to go to a place that had very little, if no exposure to Hollywood or other forms of media. And so we went to the Foray tribe in New Guinea, and what he found was he showed them these same pictures from the Westerners, and lo and behold, the Papua New Guineans, or the Foray more specifically, the Foray were able to recognize these emotional expressions. Then Paul Ekman took some posed pictures from the Foray, and in the similar way brought these pictures back to the United States, and American people looked at the emotional expressions of the Foray and were able to identify some of these basic emotions. Okay? Oh, here's the emotions of the Foray, and again, these are posed, but when he brings these back to America, people can recognize them. But right up front, we're going to come back in some later, next videos or something. you can see, let's say, for example, bottom right, here is disgust, right? You see a dead pig, it's been lying there a long time, disgust. Now, that, obviously, I recognize that expression, but I would never make an expression like that, even though I can see that there's a component to that facial expression which would very much resemble what I would do. It most certainly would not look like that. However, in the face of some of these criticisms that Ekman was getting, in particular the criticism that, yeah, but all of your pictures are posed, all right, you've got them all posed. We can show that here we've got infants that you can't say pose for the camera. They don't got the language to help you out with that. And yet you can see here that it's quite clear that these infants are showing very clear emotional expressions. You can almost envision the environmental events that are occurring to trigger these emotional expressions. So when it comes to this question of universal, when you do some kind of a meta-analysis, you find that there is, and this is where I get a little bit skeptical for sure, because it's like, are emotions universal? And what you see here is that, anger is the most universally recognized, followed by disgust, happiness, surprise, etc. But what happens is that, as you can see, there is no, I mean, because Paul Ekman was like, oh, there's six, maybe seven universal emotions, but I'm like, one, two, three, four, five, six. It just seems pretty arbitrary to just all of a sudden cut. There's no obvious drop off in recognition for these. It's just a lot. Who decided to say, oh, I'm going to just stop it there? Clunk. That's the end. These are universal. These are not. It seems real arbitrary to me. Okay. So we find that not only do we have these, some, but we experience them in different ways. So we find that people from East Asian cultures report having lower levels of emotional experiences, now lower levels, shorter time periods, less intense. Okay. So in a study that's pretty interesting here, they're going to compare Chinese Canadians and Euro Canadians, and what they're going to do is they're going to use an anger paradigm. I don't remember the details, but I do remember it had something to do with insulting them. I can imagine that. You want to volunteer for a study where we're going to insult you? Okay. And so they run through this paradigm, and then what happens is they're going to measure blood pressure and heart rate. Okay. And so, oh, here's how they did it. Showed up late, rudely badgered them to do a tedious task. And so then what they did was they measured different physiological responses, like here, for example, systolic blood pressure. And you can see what happens is the Euro Canadians and the Chinese Canadians were fairly equally impacted by the anger paradigm. But you can see that the Chinese Canadians, they let it go faster. That is 2 minutes after, 4 minutes after the anger task, you can see that their blood pressure is dropping faster than the Euro Canadians, which implies that, of course, the Asian Canadians, or Chinese Canadians in this case, they experienced less of the emotion.